Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and today I want to do something a little bit different, where I want to focus on Warhammer The Old World and leave my predictions for what will eventually happen when The Old World gets released. The purpose of this video is, after looking at all the rumours, some theories that the fanbase has, and generally what we know and what is to come, because we do know some things about other settings, so I just wanted to have a little fun today, I think. With all that being said, let's not waste any more time and jump right in. Okay, let's start off with one of the most important topics, and that would be release. So we're all waiting for the return of Warhammer Fantasy and Warhammer The Old World. This was announced a few years ago, and yet we still have little to no information because Games Workshop likes being as cryptic as possible, that's true. Many of us expected Warhammer The Old World to release this year, 2022, mainly because, well, you know, Total War Warhammer 3 released this year, so it would have been, well, absolutely massive cross-promotion, but yeah, it's not happened, but it's very likely that we're going to get Warhammer The Old World in 2023, and this is my reasonings. So, we've already had a release for Warhammer 40k, that's 9th edition, then we had 3rd edition for Age of Sigmar, now we have the new edition of Horus Heresy, more on that a little bit later. It's only logical that Warhammer The Old World would be next, because right now, 40k and Age of Sigmar aren't doing so well in terms of releases. Keep in mind that, you know, the world kind of stopped for 2 years, so they kind of need to just keep expanding upon that. Plus we know squats are coming back, there's some other races that have been hinted for Age of Sigmar, which are still not here. I think that they need to let those editions breathe for about a year or two more. 40k would be a year, Age of Sigmar would be 2. Let those editions become a lot more centered and then move on to the next edition. And obviously this year is all dedicated to Horus Heresy, so I don't think we're going to get a new edition of Horus Heresy next year, or else I might just break down crying. Then we've also got to take into account the fact that Warhammer Fantasy, which was the first setting for Games Workshop, is officially turning 40 years old next year, as the first edition of Warhammer was released in 1983. So that's a big milestone, you know, 40 years, especially for a tabletop game. What better way to celebrate 40 years than releasing a title, a brand new title, that was inspired by their original flagship game? It makes sense, and, well, let's be honest, at this point, people are kind of losing interest, so am I. So if it doesn't happen next year, I don't think that they're going to get as much money as they think. Let's be honest, the drip feeding has been a little bit bad. Now, I'm not complaining. Well, I am, but I'm not trying to be negative here. I just want the game to be out ASAP, so, you know, I can play. I've been building up my armies, I've finished a lot of my old backlog, who knew that I was actually ever going to do that? So 2023 does make a lot of sense, and it's just around the corner, I guess. Well, you know, we still don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I'd say that that's the best bet. Right, now let's move on to the next topic, which is going to be quite a point for arguments, I think. So, resin versus plastic. I think Warhammer The Old World is going to have a very heavy focus in plastic now, mainly because, well, the new edition of Horus Heresy is doing quite a big shift towards plastic. We've seen that with the Marines, we've seen that with a new Land Raider now. Well, they were old stuff, essentially, and just updated and changed around a bit, but it's still a shift towards plastic. So I think what's going to happen is that they're going to do baseline troops, so anything frontline, all the basic stuff that you kind of need a lot of, that's going to be all plastic. And it makes sense. And then maybe, this is kind of what I see it as, they'll do characters in resin, kind of like the old format, if you remember the old days, where your baseline troops would be plastic and your characters would mostly be metal. I very much doubt that they're just going to do that for just Horus Heresy, so we should keep an eye on the Horus Heresy stuff. I think that it's probably best to just see what changes in terms of what ends up being plastic, what doesn't, just because anything that happens to that could easily be happening to Warhammer The Old World. Keep in mind that this is another specialist game, essentially, so it's important to keep your eyes out for those community articles that keep getting posted every Thursday for Horus Heresy. Next, at least through the start, I think there's going to be a very heavy emphasis on older miniatures. So what I'm saying here is two things. A lot of stuff that used to be Warhammer Fantasy that did get moved to Age of Sigmar, this is pretty much all the Lizardmen, all the Skaven, a lot of the Age of Sigmar, that stuff is going to be very much used at the very beginning of Warhammer The Old World. It makes sense because a lot of these miniatures haven't really been updated. In fact, if you look at, say, for example, the Skaven Plague Monks, there was a leaked image that showed that they're just getting repackaged. It's the same old miniature. It's not really aged too well. They are a very, very old mini. I can't really remember when they were originally released, but yeah, they need a bit of a glow up. And it does make sense. A lot of stuff from Age of Sigmar hasn't been updated, as I've said, and this could eventually get updated, but in the form of cross-compatibility, like what happened with 30k and 40k, presuming that 30k and 40k keep the same cross-compatibility when it comes into the newest edition. We don't know just yet. It could be the case, but you never know with Games Workshop, because let's be honest, they do throw curveballs a lot. This could also help quite well. Look, we're not expecting loads of new miniatures at the beginning. This isn't like the Horus Heresy, where a lot of the stuff is reusable by many, many different factions, because, you know, Space Marines, you just have to paint them in different colors, and there you go. This means that we're going to need miniatures returning to be able to flesh out the rosters, and I feel like this could also work with stuff that we know they have casts for, because we've seen them do made for orders, so maybe the return of Tomb Kings, Bretonians, and stuff like that. Early on, I think for at least a year or two, it's going to be primarily old miniatures, and they'll just bring back former lines, which I think works quite well. You know, the stuff like the Wood Elves, High Elves, the Tomb Kings, a lot of those miniatures aged incredibly well. The Tomb Kings specifically because, well, they were one of the newest armies. The miniatures look fantastic, and I don't think it's going to be much of an issue for most people. Plus, this gets a lot of classic players back. They did say they want people using the old minis, whilst new minis will also eventually get released, but I don't imagine that we're going to have this avalanche of stuff. I've seen a lot of people posting online going, oh yeah, new Bretonians, new Imperials, new this, new that, and that's all great, and I think that we're going to get all that. But it's going to be a few years until we are able to get new lines for pretty much every faction. So Games Workshop need to be smart about this, and the best way to do so is to bring back the old lines, maybe some new stuff that really needs to get updated, but the majority of stuff needs to be old at the very beginning. And for a final prediction, this is something which has been in my mind for a while, and it kind of makes sense, so let's see what you guys think. Warhammer The Old World will explore various different times in the Warhammer Fantasy universe. So the main thing, as far as I see it, will follow the Age of Free Emperors, you know? So basically what we know so far. And that will be the main setting, just like the Horus Heresy. But I believe, mainly because there's a lot of potential, that they'll probably do little supplement boxes, little supplement packs with different books. Not like full-on army books, but rather, remember the whole thing with Blood in the Badlands, or just campaigns in a sense, with various different things like the War of the Beard, then obviously some stuff which was written but never released for Warhammer Fantasy 8th, like the other Thrones of Chaos books. There's a lot of that they could do to add in more miniatures to the baseline rosters, new stuff, unreleased stuff most importantly, but keep the fan base interested by, well, you know, adding a new thing here and there. This means that they'll not only be able to play a few hundred years in the past, which is what the main setting is, but we'll also be able to go to the setting of, well, you know, Warhammer Fantasy 8th, get that nostalgia bug going, and it's a big way to get a lot of releases where they can literally say, you know, these books were intended for Warhammer 8th, they were done, we've rewritten them a little bit just to fix up any things that don't really work now with this new edition, but now you get to play it. So explore this setting, explore Blood in the Badlands, explore the Crusades of Araby, loads of different settings which would hype up and generate a lot of sales. But these are all some predictions that I have regarding the setting. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. The idea is just to have a little bit of a discussion. I just want to talk about more tabletop stuff, to be honest, and this was a great segue. We've got more tabletop stuff on the way, and, you know, it'll just be cool.